Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now we are finishing up the Year of the Dresden Part 2.
The Year of the Dresden.
And discussing the characters and themes of White Knight.
Of which there are so many that we will forget and not mention.
That's a good caveat.
Do you ever think that people like listen to our episodes and they expect like this really deep dive by the fourth episode, and really what happens is we're just tired, and then they listen and they're like, they forgot like half the characters.
I mean, not for many of our books, but specifically for Dresden Files.
I mean, just Jim Butcher's books.
Yeah, probably. They're probably a little bit of a letdown, which is probably why these are some of our less listened to. Like, people really love the plot breakdowns of Harry Dresden because I think we're laughing through it. And then when it gets to like the deep dive analysis, we're like, I don't know, people were here. But I will say, stay tuned because I actually have a lot to say about the character of Elaine this week that I think is fairly nuanced. So,
okay,
more to come.
I'm interested. Consider me interested.
Laura, before we get into that, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So for my book club, we read banned books, and we read 1984 recently, and I had never read it before. Have you read it?
I have read 1984. I think I read it right after I graduated law school. So
okay, it seemed like the other people in the group, they had read it in high school, all of them, and I remember reading Fahrenheit 451 in high school, and I think we read Anthem by Ayn Rand, and I don't remember reading a lot of other banned books. To Kill a Mockingbird during high school. So this banned book thing, like I have read a lot of dystopian throughout my reading, quote unquote, career, but I had not read 1984 yet. And I don't know if it's because it was one where I was just like kind of not as interested in it because everyone just kind of is like 1984, you must read it. It's the one, it's telling the future, blah, 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 blah. I still maintain that of the banned books that I have read so far, the dystopian ones that kind of predict the downfall of society, I think Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower seems the most haunting and accurate of what I have read. But I do think that all of the banned books that I have read that are like dystopian warnings seem to have a similar theme. And Orwell's book was not an exception to this, but I noticed a similar theme. And I was talking to you about this, that all of these books kind of start with a breaking down of community, and that different factions try to separate people and make them feel alone, or that they are at odds or enemies with one another in order to create some kind of divide and make people feel singular. And that breaking down of the community in whatever shape or form it occurs in during these books is extremely harmful and leads to a lot of bad things happening. And I think, we're kind of seeing a lot of that happen in our own world. There's a lot of like, I don't need to tell listeners. We all know we're living.
You know what's going on, especially if you are in America.
This ain't the news. But I do think there's a lot of that going on where we're being told to disregard the feelings and thoughts of others because, and I shouldn't just say disregard the feelings and thoughts of others, but to disregard connecting with others and caring about others just because they're considered other, if that makes sense. And I think that that's really damaging. And I really wish we could get back to a state of, and a state of healing is so hard to reach, but I wish we could get back to more of a people just simply having empathy for their fellow humans. And I hope we get back there somehow. I think it's going to take a lot of work, and I don't have the answers. I don't know. But I do think that reading 1984, like, there's a lot of harrowing things that happen in this book. And I think that all of these books similar to this, like Brave New World, 1984, Fahrenheit 451, Parable of the Sower, they all are important books to read and offer like unique perspectives on what things are damaging to society and to people as a whole. And it's, like I said, it seems to all have a common theme grounded in the destruction of community.
Well, and I think that that's a very interesting point for banned books in particular, because I think banned books kind of come in different flavors. You, of course, have like
Hmm.
for
I
YA,
mean, books are
sexual
banned for
representation.
a lot of
Yes,
different reasons.
but it feels like there's a lot of highlights on like the dystopian era for your book club, and a lot
Sure.
of those are like the breakdown of government. And isn't it interesting that
Mhm.
those are banned books for some
Yeah.
reason?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and I do think that there is an interesting way that the world is being built with those little computer sized or pocket sized computers we have carrying
Yeah.
around with us, a la Black Mirror, where
Hmm.
we've kind of become people who are into the singular instead of the community.
Yeah.
And I think that you and I have seen different flavors of that. Like, I know when I was living in the city, I felt a very strong sense of community just with traveling, in groups, or traveling on like the L or taking public
Hmm. Hmm.
transportation, that there was a certain like community aspect of making sure that we all had access to spaces. And I think some of that has gone by the wayside after the pandemic, and with
Sure.
like a different generation of people. I know specifically there's been a lot of discourse of like a lot of young kids in their 20s are no longer taking the subway in New York. Um, and Chicago has even discussed that they can't get the funding for a lot of their train systems, and they're not getting as much income through them. And so they may have to reduce schedules, which is like devastating to me because I know how important it is to have equal access to transportation throughout the cities. And I think you've seen it from a rural sense where, you talk about how it is difficult to see young people get active in their community in rural spaces, where it's
Hmm.
like getting active into a township or into, into their local government, things like that, that
Hmm.
there just
Hmm.
aren't as much there just isn't as much community building nowadays.
So there's like a lot of messaging from like our governments and like other officials, even not within government
Hmm.
capacities, that are kind of telling us don't worry about other people, focus on your singular self or your singular family unit. And
Hmm.
I do like think that you do need to focus on what's going on in your home for sure. I'm not
Yeah.
saying not to do that. However, there's no harm in trying to help out in your community, and if you feel that there are injustices occurring within your community or greater community, to get involved. And by
Exactly.
get involved, I don't mean like involve yourself in personal issues. I'm going to be extremely in depth with my response here because I don't want people taking this out of context. So I'm not saying if you see your neighbors arguing about trash cans that you work your way in there, get involved. I'm saying like get involved in your local community, whether it be
Hmm.
through volunteerism or helping unhoused people or providing help to like clean up trash or plant trees or what. There's so
Yeah.
many opportunities. Helping with like voting and uh,
Yes.
voting days, election days in your community. They always need election officials.
Yep.
Those type of things are really helpful to you and I, Hannah, have both sent out letters to people
Hmm.
encouraging them to vote. These type of things are simple to do and more
Yes.
people can do them, and you should care about doing those types
Yes.
of things. I also think like at least in my community a big problem is a shortage of health professionals and
Hmm.
emergency response services. So if you are someone who is able to become involved in emergency response and you have the time and you have the ability to do that, I absolutely encourage you to do so because it's a very worthy profession. There is a deep need for this as people become
Yeah.
older in our communities, especially in rural areas. So I'd highly encourage you to get involved in this. But yeah, I don't want people misconstruing this thinking that I'm just telling you to barge into people's business. That's not what I'm
Well, I think
saying. But I
I think
do
what we're
think,
talking about is like a lot of the singular is a lot of like sitting there talking about how you feel, and like, well, I feel
mhm,
this and I feel that. And I think what you and I are talking about is like take that the next step. Like, it doesn't have to be talking to your neighbor about like the issues, but like it has to be do something with your feelings and emotions to add back into the community where
Yes.
and I
Actively
always
engage with your community. You don't always have
yes.
to be having political arguments with people.
Yes. And I think that that's why you brought up letters. Like, I think that that's a good first step for a lot of people who've never been
Hmm.
involved with something. Like, you can look up how to write a letter campaign. Like, it's
Yeah.
not it's pretty easy access. They're all out there, and that's a good one for like people who have limited fundings. You can like download an app called called Five Calls, where you can call your Congress
Hmm.
members. You can call them after hours and just leave a voicemail.
That's
there's
my
so
favorite
many.
thing to do.
It's my favorite thing to
I
do
hate
too.
making phone calls, so
You
I
just have to
always leave a message.
you just have to make sure to give your full address. But I think like those are huge things that may feel small, but if
Hmm.
enough people are adding to that bucket in the community, if you're signing up for food donations, if you have something in, your local area, like lots of people have lending food pantries in
Yeah.
like larger cities, and then you can just drop off cans of food for that. Like there's so many
Clothes
small
donations.
things.
There's
Yes.
there's a lot of things that are really beneficial that
Yes.
take very little effort. And
Yes.
I think, just minimal caring is a lot lacking. People think that it requires big, expansive moves, and it doesn't all the time. You don't have to do huge things to make a
Especially
difference.
as an entry point. I always like to talk about how the brain is a muscle. So teaching it to do something new is, in fact, exercise for it.
Sure.
And you can't run a marathon immediately. You cannot do a giant thing immediately with your brain that has never been worked out to actively
Hmm.
engage in a community. You need to start small, get those muscles working, and then move on to the bigger things.
There were just two other things I wanted to bring up about this book. One was how in our book club we had discussed how there were like all of these, I mean, spoilers for 1984. Uh, sorry, people,
It's been
but
around for a while.
you've had the time. Only I
Yes,
was the I was the only one who hadn't read it by now, so I'm assuming everyone's read it, and these spoilers don't matter.
exactly.
But the main character is eventually caught for his crimes and is tortured in
Mhm.
various ways in order to get him to comply with the government, with Big Brother, and we talked about how it was very interesting the different ways that he was tortured and how it seemed ultimately that fear was one of the biggest motivators for this
Mhm.
person. And I think that I just want to mention getting into all this. I think fear is also a big motivator for a lot of us today to
Mhm.
remain silent. And I I understand that completely, but I would really encourage you, especially if you're witnessing something in person, if it's like something that's not going to make you unsafe, if you can enter safely into a conversation with someone, or if you can safely help someone who is being, I don't know, someone who is receiving like racist or homophobic or
Yes.
whatever type of discourse surrounding them, I would really encourage you to stand up if you can. I know it's scary. I unfortunately have to do this kind of stuff. I know it's scary, but the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Hmm.
And
That's very true.
I really think that it's hard to overcome fearful things. And obviously what happens in the book is way worse than like me
Yes.
entering into a conversation. But I do think that fear is a huge motivator, especially now too. But I would really encourage people to try to overcome the fear that kind of holds us back from remaining connected to other people is what I was getting at with that, I guess. So
Yeah.
don't let fear hold you back from establishing or remaining in communities.
Yep.
Keep trying to defend and remain in communities. This is me getting so deep. Like, I guess I'm running for political office now. This,
I would vote for you.
I'm
Uh,
running for governor of
oh,
Illinois.
beautiful. Except we do
JK.
like the governor of Illinois.
JK, we love you, JB. Never leave. I love JB. Um, that's not a lie either. But the other thing I wanted to bring up was that I was in like my process reading this book. I was looking things up online, and somebody online, I think it was on Blue Sky, that I found someone talking about this book too, that they mentioned Brave New World. And I had read Brave New World previously,
Hmm.
and they had mentioned how Brave New World, the situation there was a lot of people like willingly gave up their freedoms. And then
Yeah.
they entered into their situation in Brave New World, but they mentioned in their like thought process that it seems like what's currently happening right now is a Brave New World morphing into a 1984 situation where
Yeah.
people are giving up things and allowing themselves to be controlled and thought policed. And I
Yep.
thought that was fascinating because like I said, I think that we often try to just like kind of like cookie cutter ourselves into, oh, it's a 1984 situation, or it's a Brave New World, or a Fahrenheit 451 situation, or me saying it's Parable of the Sower. You can probably pick any of or many of the situations happening in any of these dystopian books and apply them to situations. But I thought that, especially when we're in an age of AI puke, taking over all sorts of
Yeah.
different industries, and especially on and unfortunately creative industries, it's fascinating to think about how people are very willing to give up creative spaces and
Yes.
to give up thought processes because they would rather have someone tell them or do something for them. I
Yes.
recently learned that there are people that are, I guess, asking AI to tell them like what a book is about, and then they're claiming to have read the book. And that is
Yep.
bizarre behavior to me. I
Yep.
I don't approve of it. I also, I do not approve of the use of AI for writing books. And you
Mm-mm.
know what? Come at me if you're one of those people that is like, oh, well, I'm disabled. I'm disabled too.
Yeah.
I'm not using AI to do any of my work or to do creative work. And I would think that a lot of disabled creators would not agree with that as well from an ethical standpoint.
Right.
So I just think it's fascinating that we're in this day and age where people are willingly giving up certain things like creativity, thought, and are willingly accepting
Privacy. Like there's so many
privacy.
different things we just kind of give up on a day-to-day basis
Yes,
for ease of access type things.
correct.
Yes.
And and even just, thinking,
Mm-hmm.
having critical thought processes in order to and leading into people having this constant monitoring of us
Mm-hmm.
and what we can say, think, do, et cetera, et cetera. So I just thought that was a really interesting point, and I did not come up with it myself. I should have written down who
This
the
is Laura's like key. No, Laura's thoughts, only hers. So
you know what, JB, do you want me to be on your campaign? JB, are you listening?
she's interested.
I'm very interested, JB. We can make a dynamic duo.
Uh,
But yeah, it was a really good discussion on this book, and I really enjoy going to this book club. It was daunting for me, honestly, because I am such an introvert, and to go to an in-person thing and have to talk has been very scary. But I'm so glad that I'm going because it's nice to talk
good.
to like-minded people about things that we're reading, and these
It
have
also
all been very
shows
topical.
it also shows that Laura's living her values, that sometimes you have to do the scary thing because guess what? It's always going to be scary, but if you want to make those connections, you have to do the scary thing.
Yeah,
So,
it's really scary to talk to people. I'm really bad at it, but I'm trying, people. Hannah, the other thing that I've been doing is I was not feeling too well yesterday, so I watched a lot of TV, and I watched all of Alien Earth.
oh, I've heard good things.
You know what? I really liked it up until the end.
Oh,
I
really?
I was so disappointed by the last couple
Hmm.
episodes because it started off so strong, and I think it was like episode 5 was like a really good one where it was like a flashback episode, but I really liked like most of the season, and I think just like towards the end, it was like maybe getting a little too like predictable, a little bit
Mm,
cliche-y, where I was like, I I wish that it would have kind of stayed the course with the a little bit darker tone. I mean, it was
yeah,
dark throughout, but it got a little more like, okay, I saw this coming. And
got it.
if I'm predicting it, it's not good, guys. It's not good when I can predict it because
Laura,
I'm bad at predicting things.
you're smart. You can figure it out,
I didn't say
but
I wasn't smart. I said I'm bad at predicting things.
Laura's like, don't insult other people's intelligence with my guesstimations.
I am terrible at guessing endings of things. So when most people are like, "Oh, I guess the ending," Usually I have not. So when I was able to like predict what was going to happen, and this was like, dang, that
Mm,
it kind of like let the air out of my sails a little bit,
that
wind out of my
stinks.
sails. So I was a little like disappointed with the last couple episodes, but overall I would say it was a really solid season, and I'll definitely watch when I would assume they're going to have another season.
Yeah.
But it was really solid. I thought that some of the acting was pretty good. I do people the other thing too, like critics of this online, people always are like the writing is bad. And I just need to know what they mean by that. I think I need people to be more in depth. Give specific examples. What writing was bad? Because like in this we have a situation where we have these hybrid people that are like synths. They're humans within a synth body. And
Yeah.
so they're children. And people were claiming like the dialogue is bad, and I'm questioning like did they mean those people, like the hybrids, because they're supposed to be children, like they're not going to have the most advanced dialogue. I
No, they should be speaking with big words.
I was really confused. I always get confused when people are like the writing was bad, because I guess I just don't know what that means. People need to be more specific, because you can say like I don't know it kind of fell flat for me towards the end, or like give a more specific answer, I guess is what I'm getting at when people tend to
You
just like
need one of Hannah's rage reviews where I quote the
yes,
text.
yes, I need the quotes. Give me the specific example of what piece of writing was bad.
Yes.
But I might not disagree with you. I just want to know, because like I said, I think towards the end of the season I was kind of losing it. It seemed a little too predictable to me towards the end, and kind of started to lose a little bit of the momentum that it had earlier on in the season with a lot of things happening. But overall, really good. I also kept watching The Bear, and I like that show a lot. I
Yeah, I
think
do.
that
Yeah.
season 2 was phenomenal. I'm in the middle of season 3, and I think it's been pretty good so far. I
Okay.
have liked that. I I think there's a lot of great acting that occurs on The Bear, and I also like seeing like the glimpses of Chicago, which is pretty neat. And I like all
Yeah.
the restaurant stuff. Like I think just the atmosphere of that show, like the it looks so beautiful to watch. It's a very like aesthetically pleasing show, because even like the grittier scenes that we get, I love to watch those too. Like when
Yeah.
we get grittier food scenes, when we get grittier scenes in homes and everything, it's beautifully shot. And I think that the acting all around is really great. They do a great job. So yeah, those are a couple things I watch. Oh, and then the last thing, how could I forget? I watched Friendship on HBO Max. Have you watched this,
Oh,
Hannah?
I have not.
Have you heard of this?
No.
Okay, so this is a movie that Conan O'Brien said was absolutely hysterical. And Tim Robinson, the comedian, is the star of this. Have have you heard of Tim Robinson?
Oh, I do know Tim Robinson. I do think I
And Paul
know.
Rudd is in this as
Yes,
well.
I actually have heard of this movie. You're right. I heard about it when it was in theaters and I hadn't
People
watched
have been
it.
raving about this, and it's cringe comedy, is what it is. Let me just say, I guess it was hard for me to not cringe and hard to laugh, because I was like, there are some laughable moments, and there are people online that found it absolutely hysterical. I think I was more in the cringe area
Mm,
than anything, where so many of the things that happened was like, yikes, that
got it.
feels ick. I don't like type thing. And
Hmm.
it felt weird to laugh at some of the stuff that happens. You know what I mean? Like, even
Yeah,
though there are some absurd things that happen, it like wasn't enough for me to know like, is this something to laugh at or just feel really weird about? Like I don't
right.
know. I struggled with it because it was like not cringy enough. You know what I mean? To it was too like on the line of normalcy,
Well, I think
where I was
sometimes
like,
with with shows like that or like movies like that, it's not going to be for everyone, which I do think is okay for a
hmm.
movie. Like
Oh,
if you're like, because
I
there are certain
absolutely agree.
things you and I have talked about how certain things, if someone is being needlessly mean in a television show, like cruel in a television show, I get deeply uncomfortable and it's really hard for me
Yeah.
to watch.
And
And
honestly, I think that's kind of where I was at because there's a lot of like playing off of like this relationship that Tim is having with his wife and
yeah.
how she's a cancer survivor and she's longing for deeper connection, it seems like. And he is very inattentive to her needs and helping her for a lot of the movie and just does not seem to understand her at all. And a lot of the things surrounding her seemed really like ick to me where I'm like, oh, why is she with
Mhm.
him? Ugh. And I really kind of struggled with that. And then he enters into this friendship with his neighbor, Paul Rudd, and immediately crosses lines and breaks in and stuff like that. And like I said, I know people were like, oh, it's hilarious. It made me, I think uncomfortable is the best word to
Yeah.
describe where like a lot of the things where I'm like, yikes, that is too much. I can't do it. But yeah, I was questioning myself a lot because there were so many people who found this movie so hilarious and yikes.
I think it's okay to have certain things that just aren't for you, but you can
Yeah.
understand that other people like them and that's not,
hmm Yeah, I'm not
it's not a comment
discounting.
on you.
Like
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are a lot of people who find this movie deeply funny. I just
hmm
it was more cringe than comedy for me personally.
Yeah,
But Hannah,
that's
what have
fair.
you been reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So for reading, I've read Murderland, Crime and Bloodlust in the Time of Serial Killers by Caroline Fraser. This is a nonfiction book that looks at kind of the plethora of serial killers we had in the
Mm.
70s. Um, Specifically, people like BTK and Tim Bundy, Ted Bundy.
Ted
Um,
Bundy.
and it just kind of looks at the history of the Pacific Northwest of it all, because a lot of these murders came out of the Pacific
Mm.
Northwest, Green River Killers, things like that. And she links a lot of it with pollution and lead exposure during this time, where she thinks that there might be something to do with the chemicals of people and how that
Interesting.
affected their brains. And so she kind of highlights the history of like these serial killers along with like a lot of these toxic chemical plants that were working in the Portland area, or not Portland, but outside Seattle area. And she does
Okay.
think that there's some type of connection. And it was interesting, like obviously, white women obsessed with serial killers aside, like this does take a very specific look at like the industry around this and what might have caused this like large string of serial killers and how it worked for everyone. Um, I would say like it's always hard because I feel like I've taken a step back from the serial killer of it all, of the like early 2000s where
Sure,
many
same.
white women were obsessed with it. But I do like this look at it. I think it was an interesting look and a new look about like how this could have happened during this time. In a way that I think like if we look back, hopefully in like 30 years, like we can look at gun violence in America and how like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
societally that could have begun or could have been affected by a lot of different types of things. Because
I
I do
do
think it's,
always
yeah.
enjoy a person trying to get to the why.
hmm
Like I do appreciate that she's taking I'm assuming the author was a she.
Yes,
That
yeah.
may be an incorrect assumption.
No,
That she's taking a scientific approach to say, like, is there something that, like, some kind of chemical exposure that is leading to a chemical imbalance or something
yes,
like some kind of disorder that people have
yes.
that is making them literally sick? Like, I do appreciate that kind of take rather than just like, oh, we
People are
can't
evil.
tell. People are just
Yeah.
bad. Like I like that people are, I guess, trying to figure something out,
Well,
especially when we have, like you said, ties to like a lot of people from a specific region.
right. And it was also interesting because it also kind of talks about like even if it's not about the environmental toxicity, that still was going on during a time where people are still obsessed with the serial like murderers,
Hmm
but
hmm
not these companies that have benefited for years and years on the backs of people and
Yep.
their health. And so I do think that that's also an interesting look. Like there is
Yeah.
kind of some underlying connection that she's trying to make, but I think the bigger picture is like and the the harm is dehumanizing women all or
Yep.
and people all the way down.
Hmm.
And I think that that's just a very interesting look at it. So I enjoyed the book a lot. It was quite long.
Nice.
And I will say that she jumped around timelines a lot, which was a little confusing because sometimes Ted Bundy is like 30 and sometimes he's 20 and sometimes he's 16 and like it just
I
bounces
feel like
around a lot.
books that do like get into true crime do that though.
I
A lot of
know,
true
but
crime does
it's
that.
just so silly to me. I'm like, I would rather have like timelines. I'm not like,
I
where
on
are
it.
we
I
at when
honestly think
all
it's to
these?
keep your attention that they
I
do that.
know, but
They think
like
people are going to get bored.
if the whole thing is like environmentalism, then like just keep us on a standard timeline of what's
Sure.
happening around them. But and then for watching and enjoying, I finished Act Two of Silk Song. I don't want to get into too many spoilers because I feel like we're getting into the territory of someone who hasn't spent 69 hours of their lifetime in the
69
past.
hours?
It tells you how long you've been playing it, and that is damning. I would say it's over the course of like a month and a half. No, it's over the course of about a month, 69 hours. I spent a lot of Saturdays just sitting on the couch and playing it. So damning. Um, but I finished
Wow.
the second act of it, so I don't want to get too much into it, but
How
I will
many
say
acts are there?
I think there's going to be three.
Okay.
But like
Has
I
anyone finished it?
oh, I'm sure there are like speed runners who like
Really?
their
Like
only
that's all
goal
they
is
do.
to just like get to the end. But they're missing some of the beauty, and I'm sure there are people who spent many more hours
They're
on this.
missing some of the beauty. They should only spend 69 hours on
Well,
it.
like, and my sister-in-law, she spent like about 7 or 80 hours, and she's like way more into the like looking at the different areas and doing all this stuff.
Hmm.
Um,
Exploration.
and so I'm interested to see what just happened. I just got like a newish power, which is pretty cool. But I don't want to like go into like the final battles and things like that because there's so much beauty to this game, like in the artwork, that you don't really want to ruin it.
Mhm.
But yeah, so
Tell me
I did.
off, Mike. You can ruin it for me because I don't do video
Yes, I will
games.
let you know. And then for watching, I've watched our TV Tuesday show, but I've also been watching Platonic on Apple TV. This is the
Oh, okay.
Rose Byrne and Seth Rogen TV show where they're two best friends who lost touch because Rose Byrne hated his wife, or
Hmm.
the woman he was getting married to, and they lost touch, but then he's getting a divorce and they reconnect. Um, I watched like the first 6 episodes of this, and then I accidentally watched what happens in the next couple episodes, and I was like, I don't think I want to watch it. I think I'll be too uncomfortable. It goes back to your like cringe. Like, there's
Yeah.
certain parts of this that I think hit a little bit too close to home for me. Like Rose, is a character who was an attorney and she's a stay-at-home mom now who's like trying to find a house to build and things like that. And I like all that stuff, but it's getting into like her trying to get back into the workforce in a really weird way and a very deeply uncomfortable way that I understand is comedic on some level, but makes me a little bit sad and uncomfortable, especially coming as someone who's an attorney, because I feel like a lot of people who aren't attorneys like that's hysterical, and me, I'm like, you are a licensed attorney who is doing something like deeply on the line of inappropriate. Why would you do that? Like, that's not okay,
Yeah.
like, and
Hmm.
you spent a lot of money and you got barred and you have to follow ethical rules. And there's just certain stuff that I'm like, ugh, do I really want to watch that happen? Like, I think it'll just make me uncomfortable. So I will say, like, the first 2/3 of the show are very funny. It's always interesting because like the show is created because by two people who made the Friends from College series on Netflix that like everyone hated.
Yep.
And I actually watched all of those of that like show, and I was like deeply intrigued by it. So I think that they're
Hmm.
two very interesting creators because like people kind of talk about how they're a little bit like white people who are very, very like educated and very privileged and sometimes don't understand that and are making comedy for white privileged people, which
Can't
was very
relate.
much Friends from College energy, where a lot of people were like ragging on that show because like these people are insufferable. They just went to like an Ivy League and hang out being insufferable together. Why is this happening? And I think this one has a lot more like chaotic energy because you have the Seth Rogen in there and like they created
Sure.
Neighbors with him and Rose. And so they
Hmm.
have like a deep connection with all of each other. Um, and so I think it's a good show. I mean, it's gotten rave reviews and things like that. I'm just not sure it's always for me. And sometimes the humor
Sure.
doesn't quite hit where I would want it to be on a show like this, which I think is sometimes absurd, but like leans into an absurd that it goes back to what you were just talking about, where it's like I'm just uncomfortable and I don't really like watching
Sure.
this. Um, but yeah, Seth Rogen is such an interesting character. I want to watch his other show on Apple TV and see if I like that one better because I've also heard
That's
very
the one
good
that
things
got all
about.
sorts of Emmys.
Yes, and so I'm interested in that one. I watched Platonic, but oh, to go back to why it was created, um, the two creators are married, and they were talking about how like after they got married, every couple kind of becomes very gendered. So even when they were going out to see a friend that she had had for years and years and years, who was a man, it always ended up him talking to her husband and her talking to the female friend. And she's like, I think that that's just naturally happened.
Hmm.
And it's an interesting premise because I like as someone who didn't have many male friends, there are moments in time where like I have a very close friend from my law school days, and there are moments when he and I are not talking as much, and I'm mostly talking to his wife. And I do think that
Okay.
there is something to that in a way,
Hmm.
um, or sometimes like women are trained to like care more about children. So I'm going to be talking to his
Hmm.
wife about the children and like, but I still think he and I are deeply close. Like I just saw him in Chicago. We met for breakfast and like my
Hmm.
husband was talking to his wife for a while. He and I were catching up about work for a while. So I think there's something to it that I was very fascinated by with the premise, but the humor didn't always land for me. So um I didn't watch as much of it. So yeah, but if that's something that interests people, they should definitely check it out. So,
Cool.
and other than that, I've just been playing 70 freaking hours of Silksong, so not much
You just said
watching.
69, so in the
69,
time in
69.
the time that we've
Uh
been talking, Hannah has secretly played another hour.
I haven't checked it today after I played for a couple, but I did like the problem with me is like
71.
ADHD is strong with me, so if I'm gonna sit down to play for like 15 minutes, quote unquote, I'm gonna play for 3 hours. And
Hmm.
today I feel very proud of myself because I stopped to like meal prep and make banana bread, and I was able to
Nice.
do that very successfully. So,
Good.
but shall we dive in?
I guess let's do it.
Okay, so let's start with Elaine because I do actually have
Yeah, you
something to
had so
say
much to
about
say.
her.
I want to hear it.
I would like to get on my soapbox in defense of Elaine. I
Okay.
think Elaine is an interesting character who deserves more. I actually think
Shock.
Butcher has created a very dynamic character that is a great foil for Harry Dresden, and I'm glad she's in this book, and I'm glad she was created because there's so
She's
much
in this book for like not that long though.
I know, and it's so frustrating because like I think she's the character I kept coming back to in this book where I'm like, isn't it so interesting that like we see different flavors of her and we see what could have happened to Harry? Because I think when we were first introduced to her, it was very much like, you tried to kill me. And then she was like, well, I was being mind controlled. And it was just kind of this like huge drop of knowledge. And sometimes Butcher has really good like nuggets that he doesn't flourish enough. And I feel like in this book we got some of it flourished where like she has stuff where she talks about how she has PTSD and how she had to run away from the White Council and she doesn't trust them because she can't have another person having ownership over her body again because of the PTSD that has happened after the Justin of it all. And I think that that's really fascinating and important for Harry to see because I think Harry started off as someone who the White Council didn't trust, but he was still someone who was very integrated into the White Council. Like he had someone who had his back. He was still part of the process and he's still part of the overarching structure of this magic system. What we find in Elaine is the person that I think Harry thinks he is. Like Harry thinks he is this renegade person who colors outside the lines but doesn't understand the deep-seated trauma that comes with being that person. Where we find Elaine and she is deeply isolated because she cannot show her true powers and she has to build this network and build this community because of who she is and the dangers she has inherent in herself. And she is actually the rebel who Dresden wants himself to be. And I think that that's fascinating. And I really liked her character and I feel deeply connected to that character, even though she didn't get enough screen time. I am Wheel of Timing this, and I'm reading more into her than I was given.
I think you are reading more into her than you were given, and I really appreciate that take. My counter, because and I deeply appreciate you putting so much thought into this, Hannah. I was smiling throughout you talking about this because all I could think of was Butcher stopped caring about this character.
Yes.
So he just stopped writing about her and
Mm-hmm.
was like, back to vampires. That's what the
Right?
people care about, and me too. And I do think that character of Elaine has a lot of potential. However, I don't think that Butcher cares about her in that way.
Which
I think
is,
he does set up many of his characters actually to be very interesting people, a
mhm.
la Karen Murphy
Yeah.
could be extremely interesting. However, he does not care enough about any of them to get into that depth of these characters because the world revolves around Harry Dresden. And I think he just cares more about Harry Dresden and apparently vampire politics to
Very weirdly about vampire
rather than get
politics.
into a complicated situation or a really dynamic person like Elaine.
There, so like I agree with you wholeheartedly. There are flavors of it where like Elaine talks to Harry and explains herself where I was like, yes, give
Yeah.
us more of that because that's interesting.
Hmm.
Where she's like, Harry, I can't be controlled. Harry, I feel like I'm failing my people and I have to succeed because why do I exist otherwise? Or like,
Yeah.
Harry, I went to the summer court because I was looking for something to protect me. And so I had to make the best choice for the person who had been damaged and who had to crawl her
Mhm.
way back out. I'm like, those are such great little nuggets. Give me more. I want an Elaine side story because I think she's just
The
far
thing
more
is, if we
interesting at
had
this
more of
point.
Elaine, we wouldn't have as much time to
Discuss
ogle
Scavis versus
Molly.
Scavis. um,
I was thinking there were all those moments where we had to have people like being inappropriate with Molly that we wouldn't have gotten, and those are deeply important to the story.
yeah,
So unfortunately, there was no room for Elaine to have a deeper character
I know. It's so
because we needed
disappointing.
Molly to be objectified at every turn.
Well, and I don't. I feel so torn about the Molly character because I don't like
Do you?
her.
I don't feel torn.
Yeah, I just don't like her. I like. I think again, Molly is more interesting to the world of the wizards than she is in and of herself. Like I like Elaine because Elaine is interesting outside of the wizarding world and the way it's
Mhm.
structured. Like she is deeply outside of it. And so
Yeah.
that is fascinating to me to like watch her build this internal connection, a la like Susan, who's just like, I'm gonna leave the page and never look back.
You'll never
Um,
forget me, though.
and I'll build this outside network. Like she was barely on the page, and then she became
Yeah.
more interesting after she left Harry. And
Yeah.
even Elaine is like, every time I walk into Chicago, I get pulled into these stupid books where Harry is the
Hmm.
main character, so I must be damseled. Um,
Elaine is also saying, "Is this a stupid vampire book? Are you kidding me? I wanted to be in the fairy one."
that is what she is saying. And or the witch
Mhm.
one. I was in the witch
Mhm.
one. Why did you pull me into this stupid vampire book?
Why did this become about vampires? It was about witches.
But Molly's character is inherently just about what it says about the wizarding world, which is very
And also
deep.
what it says about men.
Yeah. And apparently, I don't think Bitcher likes men very much either because they're all falling all over themselves for this 18-year-old. And
Mhm.
that's just
Mhm.
gross.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, I think we're supposed to be like, oh, good. He writes men who think girls with bleached, spiky hair are hot. And it's like, she's 18. I don't care.
Here's
Like,
my thing, though, and I hate to even say this. I would prefer Molly to have been a man character. Like I think
yeah.
that I would have preferred his apprentice, Dresden's apprentice, to be a man.
Yep.
Because I think this would have been, we would have still gotten all the teachable moments and everything. And Dresden might actually have grown more as a person, having to interact with men because he does not have healthy relationships with other men. And I
Or women,
no,
honestly.
but I think it would have been fine and probably a better situation to read about rather than constant talk of Molly and where her piercings are or her shape or what she's wearing or what
Or
her
that the
eye makeup
secret
looks like
all
or
along was she just needed to know that this was serious. Why have like pages and pages of like, you can't lift this single thing if it wasn't even going to be important to the book? Like, we're just such a again, I get that these are often like more cinematic and we're supposed to kind of
Hmm.
read these as like movies and
And then he
like
just makes her wait in the car.
I
It's not like she even
know.
adds anything. I can't with
I
Molly.
yeah.
I am not a fan of Molly in this, and I really wish that it would have been like one of Michael's sons, honestly, rather than his daughter becoming the apprentice, because it, like I said, I am very fearful that at some point these two will end up in a relationship. I
I
don't like
really hope
that,
not. I just hope
especially since we
not.
already know that like she selects boyfriends if they look like Harry Dresden or have some kind of proximity to Dresden. And he definitely
If
finds her
they're
attractive and
orphaned.
is doing the good guy thing by not making a move, which
Yeah.
you. So yeah, I don't I could go on forever about how I hate this, but yeah, it's just bad. And it sucks to be a woman and be like, you know what? I would like this woman to not be a woman in this story. I would like this woman to be a man. But that's where I'm at. What a hot take.
Yeah. I do think it probably would have been more successful if she were a man. Because, like, Harry also,
It would have been easier to digest for sure.
but Harry also doesn't really feel connected to women if he's not sexually attracted to them. Like,
He did initially
Murph,
to Murphy, but
Murph initially, but it's kind of gone by the wayside where
mm-mm.
now every woman must want to be with Harry Dresden and every man must want to be
Want to
him.
be him.
And
Because he's
that's,
constantly comparing himself to other men every time he's in any kind of interaction or association with any other man, where it's like, well, he's not as tall as me. I'm like an NBA player. Well, he's not as fast as me because I'm faster than a jet. And he's not as strong as me because I am wiry. And like, okay, I,
well, then like Rodriguez, the Spider-Man to his Hulk,
mhm.
like their relationship is good in a way in this book because it actually has some motivations, which is shocking.
But he has
Um,
to be belittled by
but
Dresden because
he,
Dresden devalues his sexual experience.
because he's a virgin. Well, and
Yes.
that's like that is the weird thing about Rodriguez, because if you think about Rodriguez, he is starting right now at the age that Harry was at the beginning of these books.
Hmm.
Like Harry is now supposed to be beleaguered, and Rodriguez is who Harry was. Like Harry is 25, Rodriguez is 24. Harry infantilizes him so hard that I'm pretty sure Harry in the first book would just see Harry as Morgan.
Yep.
Like he would see him as that person and he's just like it, and I do find it interesting that the discussion between those two characters in this book was trust because Rodriguez is coming in with like you're not trusting me, which is the same thing Harry complained about when he was first coming into these books of, well, you don't trust me. But I don't think Harry has enough perspective to see that shifted roles. Like, I think
Oh,
Harry
absolutely not.
consistently sees himself as a 50-year-old man.
Oh,
And he
absolutely.
started these books as a 50-year-old man. So it
He's
doesn't
also one of
matter.
these people that weirdly, like, he has specific things that I think he has an open mind about, and mostly that's related to religion.
Yes.
But other things, he's very
Specifically
close.
Christian religion, too. Like,
Christianity,
yeah.
yes. And I would also maybe throw in atheism, that he's
Yes.
fairly open-minded about. But I would say on most things though, he's very it's my way or the highway
Right.
in his thought processes, and it's a little grating.
It is a little grating just to see how much Harry thinks he is the best because that's what he critiques so many other people for thinking.
Yes. He
Yeah.
considers himself like the gold standard, honestly, but at the same time it's interesting because I mean, we could go all psychology on this where it's like I am always right and I have the perfect moral compass, but at the same time, I deeply dislike myself and find myself awful and that I'm ruining humanity because he also does kind of think that too.
I do think that sometimes people who have a higher sense of self also are people who deeply think that they're bad. Like there's a weird thing of I think I know what's right for the world. but also because I know what's right for the world. I know I'm not right for the world.
Hmm.
Like that
Hmm.
is a very specific type of person. And I do think we find them a lot in media where like the good guy never thinks they're the good guy. That's the whole point. If they think they're
Hmm.
good, then they're going to be bad. And so I think that that's where Harry's coming in of like, well, I'm a deeply depressed person who consistently thinks about where I stand in the world and I always find myself wanting. But like at the same time, because I know this about myself, like great power comes great responsibility. Because I think that's what Molly has to learn by the end of this book
Yeah.
is you are you are bad, but that doesn't mean you're not good. Like Wreck-It Ralph style. Like it's just
Thanks,
this.
Satan. I honestly love that joke from that movie where they're in like the group therapy session and he thanks Satan who's sitting right next to him. It's my favorite.
Oh, I loved that movie. I love that
Honestly,
movie.
both of those
Uh,
movies are so underrated. Like
they're
people talk about
so
good Disney
good.
movies. Wreck-It Ralph movies are very, very good.
They're one of the movies fall asleep sometimes like watching because I love them so
A
much.
plus, yes.
They're so funny. But like, yeah, I am bad and that is good. Like, I think that that's very much Harry's energy and what he needed to teach Molly in this
Mhm.
situation, which is just wild to me.
Yeah.
Like it's so strange. Um, but
But then
yeah,
honestly, like I said, Molly doesn't do too much. Then he just like, well, you get to a certain point and she just has to sit in the car and shield the car
yeah.
and keep the Sonic bark dog in there with her to protect her, or she's protecting the dog. It's unsure to me
I
which
think
is happening.
I think she's being protected by the dog because
Okay.
even though she's strong and amazing, it's only with being cloaked.
And also, there's this other factor that we have to consider that she's a woman, so she needs to be protected.
Well, she does need to be protected, specifically by
Mhm.
Harry or her
At
new
all costs.
boyfriend, Rodriguez, who I guess is going to lose his virginity to Molly.
Here's my other thing. I mentioned this previously. Do you think that he was specifically like mentioned as being a virgin because we had to have someone perfect for Molly? Like, I
I
hate to even go down that realm, but it, I will be bothered if I don't bring
Ramirez.
it
I
up.
keep calling him Rodriguez, but I was talking about Susan.
Ramirez. It's
Yeah,
Susan
sorry.
Rodriguez.
Sorry, that was
It's
my fault.
Ramirez.
Yeah,
I knew who you
Ramirez.
were
Yes.
referring to, but it is
Um,
Ramirez. Yes.
it is Ramirez. So sorry about that. My voice text and then this all discombobulated me. Um, I think Ramirez is just, yeah, I think you have a point with him being a virgin for Molly. I think that that's also
Yeah.
like a way to make it okay that he's 24 dating an 18-year-old of
Mhm.
like,
They're both
it's,
inexperienced because one's immature and the other one has never had sex. Like,
well,
is
yeah,
sexually inexperienced. Like, I don't know.
yeah. And this book is like, because she's definitely had sex.
Hmm.
But like these books are always they're early 2000s, so they're weirdly uptight about sex. Because if you
Yes.
think about it, Harry hasn't had sex in 4 years. The last time he had
Oh,
sex,
we know because he's constantly having to bring it up
it
and he's so
was
ashamed.
Susan Rodriguez who he did have sex with, and then like Murph, we know she had sex once with Hendrix, but that's pretty
Hmm.
much it. They're weirdly uptight about sex. So I
Yeah.
think that Ramirez had to be a virgin in order to get him with Molly. So it would be this weird, like a nest, like this weird sanitized version
Hmm.
of a relationship in these books.
Yeah. I think if we want to talk more about like how strange Harry Dresden's relationships with other men are, there's no one else to talk to or talk about than Thomas because
Yeah.
what is even happening with those two? Like, have a conversation, my guys. Like, just talk.
I
Your
mean,
brothers,
that one's interesting because they've only been brothers for a couple of years.
they've been brothers for a long time. They just didn't know it.
Yes, but like they've only been like actively in a relationship for a few years in a weird way where they both shared a bedroom in a studio, quote unquote,
Hmm.
apartment. I think this one is weird because A, Harry's pretending to be a gay man, which is strangely homophobic.
Yeah.
Um, and Thomas is just like hiding a bunch of stuff because he's not allowed to talk about it. But like their relationship is now just turned into a gimmicky, like, well, you're my brother, but you're not my brother. Like it's just very off the page until they're
Do we think that is a
together.
little bit plot witchy that they are like that we had to have them be related in order to make certain things happen? Is that what we think is the situation with them?
I mean, I don't think that that was the original intention,
Okay, but
but I
it's
don't
kind of
think it,
happening a little bit.
yeah, it's kind of just happening a little bit now
Okay.
because he's easy to add to these as like,
Well, yeah, because every
yeah,
single book has to be about vampires.
yes. And I do think that that's the biggest problem is
Yes, the
Thomas
vampires are the
is,
biggest problem.
yeah, Thomas is just always added so that he and Harry can chit chat and be besties. And I like that Harry has someone he loves that isn't a woman. Like, I do enjoy Thomas being like, yeah, I can do power and I can do all these things. And it's really interesting. Like, I like that about him,
Hmm.
but I don't love how easy it is to just like drum him up for every single plot line.
Yeah, I don't know. It does feel a little bit like convenient to use Thomas for a lot of these books, and a lot of the plots seem to revolve around these vampire war situations and
Yeah.
everything. So I do think probably it's convenient from that aspect. I I think Dresden or again, I'm confusing Dresden and Butcher. They're the same person. Jim Butcher, I think, must just really like where he's gone with these vampires, or he got really good feedback on vampires. But I unfortunately am not a vampire person.
Yeah.
So I struggle with all the vampire of it all. And I think like I would be more interested if we had more of a sibling that was not a vampire, or even if he was still a vampire that was not as deeply within the vampire politics as Thomas is. I don't know. I just think that their relationship seems a
I
little strange to me in terms of like the way they communicate, and also just like they're caring for one another also, because what we see is not like what we're getting. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
hard to explain that when they say they deeply care about each other, but then we don't see them having conversations beyond like,
Yeah.
do you like pizza? Yes,
I
me too.
think
Okay.
I do always fall back when it comes to the vampires on the time because early 2000s was so wrought with vampires. So
I'm
wrought
sure I just
that
I
I could
avoided it then. I want
see,
to avoid it now.
yeah, that I can see them just being like, oh yeah, more vampires. That's what's hot right now. And this is Monster of the Week, so that's just an easy overarching, like vampires are so
Yeah.
ubiquitous for this time. I
Monster of the Week is always vampires.
I know. And I also think that like the sibling relationship is unfortunately also early 2000. Like a lot of these books can be hand waved away. And I apologize for doing it almost every book with like, well, it was the early 2000s. Shrug. Like,
Yeah.
but that is the truth. Like books come out, they don't come out in a vacuum. They are an
Hmm.
expression of the time that we are currently in at that moment.
Sure.
And so because this is Monster of the Week, because vampires are huge, because we are looking at a man who, in effect, has to be the main character in an early 2000s book. Dresden is going to be the main focus. He is going to save the day at all times. He is going to have a ragtag bunch of sidekicks who help effectuate the plot for him. And he and Thomas are never going to speak, but they're going to be inherently close because they're siblings. Because I think back to like not to always bring up Charmed, but like Charmed, one of the sisters dies. Like in the third season, the main sister dies
Ooh, I
because
wonder if Thomas
Shannon,
died. We talked a lot about like death with vampires and the obsession with it.
yeah, but like they brought in a new sister and she's
Hmm.
just as close with the rest like two seasons in. And it's like that's not realistic, but it is
Hmm.
a weirdly early 2000s thing of like family is the utmost. You have a deep inherent connection with family. And so it makes sense that you guys are just as close as the sister you were raised with, which is a wild thought. Like it's just wild.
Hmm.
And so I think that's very much the Thomas of it all of like, well, I
Sure.
love him because he's my brother and we have a familial tie, so of course we're close. And I don't think a lot of people were A, delving into these books as deeply as we are, or B, seeing
How
it
dare they?
more like seeing it as just, hey, it's family members, you know? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was a very kind, thoughtful, and really rational take. I'm going to go polar opposite and say that no forgiveness. These characters need to have more depth, and I don't like this relationship.
It's
And it's
weird.
mainly because I don't like the vampires. Too much vampires.
It's weird that these books are still so huge. Like they still have like in the fantasy community, like lots of people love these
Oh,
books and like
absolutely.
read them voraciously. And if you don't have a strong attachment to the beginning of them, it just surprises me. Like people who find these books later in life and they're like, oh, this speaks to some inherent need of me. And maybe it's our overanalysis of it. Maybe if we were reading this as like fun little, like thoughtless books, a la all the Megan Miranda books I've ever read, maybe I would not think of it that hard.
I
But
do think we do have a somewhat clouded experience because we are taking
yes,
notes on the book.
yes.
Had we not been taking notes, and this is not to say we have not had fun because Hannah, I do think you
Oh,
and I have had fun reading several of these books,
yeah,
and that we have mentioned many things about Jim Butcher's writing that we deeply appreciate. I do think he is a skilled writer. I
yes.
have, I will never say he's not a skilled writer
No,
because that is absolutely not true to say. I just think that when we are talking about our experience with these books and why we find so many issues with them, why we have like this or that, I think it's because these are not meant to be taken that seriously.
no.
People,
They're meant
I
to
don't
be
think Jim
enjoyed.
Butcher thought people would be taking notes. He'd
Well,
be
and
like, stop taking notes.
yeah, and in defense of these books, like my husband loves these books. So like it's not like I'm reading these in a vacuum. Like
Hmm.
he talks about how he loves the monsters of the week. He loves the Harry Dresden like throwing on his coat and just trying to make do and trying to do the best at the end of the day. And I do wonder if we get that a lot in fantasy that isn't like this is urban fantasy. So like Harry in and of himself is an urban hero. So I
Hmm.
think if we're looking at this in context of like the fantasy of it all, because you and I have read many fantasy series throughout our time with these different
Hmm.
books, it is unique to have a character who is in the modern era, who is the main character, but not a quote unquote chosen one, who
Hmm.
isn't always the most powerful in the room, but gets lucky. Like, I think that that is interesting because in a lot of fantasies, it's like, a powerful family or a powerful person, or they're so, or like,
A surprise person, like an orphan who
yes,
was surprisingly the king, like
yes.
that type of situation.
Because Wheel of Time, the Poppy War, special powers, not
Hmm.
chosen one, but like thrown
Chosen one
into a,
adjacent.
yes, Jade City or, Greenbone, famous and strong family.
Hmm.
Like, I feel like this is a good modern day telling of these types of fantasy heroes who's like screwing up, loves a jacket, has a house cat and a dog.
I do think urban fantasy maybe leans a little bit, especially when we're allowing things to be a little more comedic, leans a little bit heavier into reality, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense, where we need the character to be relatable. So we need to kind of ditch the royal themes. We need to ditch a lot of the like chosen one type situations because people can't relate to that in
Yeah.
a like realistic setting. If this is something that's set in supposedly modern day Chicago, we need this to be a person who eats pizza, who likes to read Star Wars comics, and
Mm-hmm.
has all sorts of tapestries on the
Yeah.
wall. Like somebody who has a cat and just came across this dog who has a car that never works because these are relatable things.
Yes.
So I do, and I think this is another thing. Like right now, Crawler Carl has become really popular. I think similar themes exist within that series as well. I have not read it. I just know a little bit about it, where there's a cat that is, I think, called Donut or something like that. It's a
Okay.
cute little cat. And there's this man who's just thrown into this situation where he's expected to like go down in these dungeons and fight for his life basically to save the world.
Okay.
And it's kind of a similar situation from what I can tell to Butcher, where we have to try and relate to someone who's comedically trying to save himself and the
Yeah.
rest of the world. And we have to make them a relatable person. And a lot of that is done through, I think, Butcher does a lot of that through humor and
Yes.
also like situations that people go through, like breaking down of cars, and also like the
Depression.
realities of mental illness.
Yes. I was gonna say and depression. Yeah, I think you're right. And I think also if I think about these, like another thing we probably don't give enough credit for is what you're talking about with the Star Wars comics, with the superhero stuff.
I mean,
When these
he
books
even
were
like ties in
created,
like Mickey Mouse watches and
yeah.
Muppets, like a lot of the connections to like comics and media and things that are on TV and stuff like that. I think very much are ways to tie readers to the story and make the character of Dresden more relatable. He's someone who
Yes.
also likes the Muppets. He has a Mickey Mouse watch. Like these are
Well,
things that are
looking
relatable.
back on this again from like a historical context, this is also pre-Marvel and pre like Star Wars becoming kind of a mainstream. So I wonder if that colors us sometimes where we're like, yeah, he's just an everyman, where it's like, no, he was incredibly relatable to people who were reading and consuming these books at this time because it wasn't really talked about that people liked superheroes. And it wasn't talked
Yeah,
about
that
that,
was probably
yeah, like,
still within the realm of like you were a big nerd and you don't bring it up if
yeah.
you read comics. You like Iron Man comics, you shut up about that because people will stuff you in a garbage can. Like
Right. So I think that
the
also kind
Saved
of
by the Bell.
or like
Don't
the
talk about
Muppets.
that.
It's pre-nerd culture becoming very like hip and now. Like now if someone's like, I like the Muppets, I'm like, okay, you like the Muppets. And it's pretty ubiquitous with society that you're gonna like what you like and you get to nerd out on what you want to nerd out on. But I do think he was probably
I mean, not
incredibly
totally, but I think we're a lot more
yeah,
accepting.
that's fair. But I think like he was a lot more relatable at that time where you and I are just not used to that, or like it's so common stance that we're just like, oh yeah, shrug, whatever, like, and we just don't think about it. But I do think he was probably very unique from when he was created. And it's fun to see a belief. Like, I think it is technically fun to see someone in their 20s who is an old soul and just like, oh, I'm too old for this, actually get old and become
I mean, when you're
actually too
talking
old
about
to
like a
this.
time, a point in time in culture or whatever, to have someone like this, I think you're really like kind of nailing it on the head where people maybe have a deep nostalgia and feeling for Harry Dresden because he was that one
Yeah.
representative of somebody cool who still had a lot of things going on that were deeply troubling. I mean, he has a really complex parental situation, a really complex family situation in general. I mean, his parents are deceased. He has a
Hmm.
half brother that he just found out about. His adopted father was not great. He
No.
struggles with work. He's getting by just paycheck to paycheck. He has car troubles. I bring the car troubles up a lot, but he's dealing with mental illness
Yeah.
and like trying to kind of hobble that along, not necessarily acknowledging it, relatable. There's a lot of this that I think that in that moment in time, we maybe didn't read a lot about a character
Yeah.
that had a lot of these things going. So I do see a lot of the things in Dresden that we weren't seeing in other characters at the
Yeah.
time, where he is someone that people can relate to for a variety of
Yeah.
reasons.
Well, that also brings us to someone who we haven't talked about, which is Lasheel. Uh,
Oh, deeply
where,
sad. Yeah.
yeah, like Lasheel's an interesting character because it's a deep look at personhood of like this thing that was created that didn't ask to be created and spends a long time trying to tempt a person and then is fundamentally changed by it, which I think is a very interesting theme and premise for a fallen angel.
Have you
To
heard of internal family systems, Hannah?
I have not.
Okay, so my therapist was telling me about this internal family systems, and I find the concept of it fascinating because I had mentioned that I often feel like I have different subsets of myself that come out, whether I'm at like work or dealing with friends or what have you. And internal family systems is a look, it's a psychology look, I guess, at like how people kind of separate themselves off into these different groups
Yeah.
depending on the situation or what they're dealing with. And to me, I was mostly relating it to like what I would consider and what a lot of people would consider like customer service Laura is different than
Right.
home Laura. But I'm able to recognize now, like I do this in other settings as well.
Yeah.
So when I was thinking of Lashiel in this book, I was like getting a little bit of that, honestly, where it's like
Yeah.
this was a section of Lashiel that was like broken off and put into Harry Dresden and became a fully formed thing.
Being. Yeah. I think that that's very apt, and very true because my husband once pointed out to me that if I'm with close friends, I speak in a different tone.
Hmm.
I speak
Hmm.
deeper when I'm around friends. So I do think that that's very apt. But you're right. Like this was a different version of her that got put into Harry and never expected to be there for very long. And I think
Also
it's very,
interesting discussions of free will and the like nature of, or I guess the discussion of like who gets to decide what happens to
yeah.
someone. You know what I mean?
Well, and of like a portion of it is redemption. Like, is
Oh, for
anyone
sure.
above redemption? And in the realm of AI and like robots and things, like what is human? Like that's an interesting aspect of this of like
Mm-hmm.
this was a spirit or some portion of a spirit. At what point does that spirit become in and of itself like singular? I think that that was very interesting because Harry's whole point was you will cease to exist. You will just become a part of the whole again. And there are some people who believe that like becoming part of the whole again, you're still you, you are still that
Same.
person. Um, but to
Read
the
Becky
end,
Chambers, everyone.
yeah. But like
A closed in common orbit. Read it.
very philosophical. But at the same time, like, what about that thing that it's about to be consumed? Like, do they actually feel that way? What if there's a
Yeah.
disagreement in the portions of the soul that are made up of all of these different things? I think that that's a very interesting take, especially with how this person decided to leave, you
Hmm.
know, and like remove herself to save someone.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I also did kind of appreciate that we had this very like self-sacrificing move on the part of Lashiel, because a lot of what happened with Lashiel in previous books felt pretty icky.
Yeah.
So I did appreciate there was this character arc of at least some form of like redemption for the
Yeah.
character when we're talking about redemption, that and I do wonder if you and I previously mentioned in like the plot episodes that we kind of would have liked more depth to this
Yes.
particular plot line. And I stand by that it would have been nicer to stretch
Mm-hmm.
this out rather than kind of wrap it up right here. But maybe there's the potential for us to learn more about this in coming books. But I kind of think that he maybe is just stopping it here. But I do, if this is the stopping point, I do appreciate the overall thought process behind it,
Yeah.
I think.
I think this is one of his more interesting. I think both Lachelle and Elaine are some of the more interesting characters to bring it full circle of like
Hmm.
people who have philosophical discussions about what it means to be Harry Dresden, because Lachelle
Yes.
was in his head and Elaine is his past. So very interesting. Any other closing thoughts?
We haven't talked about Karen, but it's kind of more of the same with Karen.
Yeah, I feel like we'll save her for when we return next
I,
year
I
because I think
mean,
there's
I
just not much
what
to
else is there
say.
to say that it's the same
Sh-
thing happening, that
She's
they
pure
just
sidekick at this point.
they're just
Like,
will they, won't they?
yeah, she's there to
The
support
Sam and
him.
Diane of it all.
She literally wasn't even in this book, if you think about it. Like, she was there for like
I
two
mean, she
fight
was
scenes,
there
but
occasionally to be convenient.
yeah, yeah, there to like say like, oh, who's that woman? Like,
Hmm.
but that was pretty much it.
Like, Harry, we shouldn't get in a relationship.
Oh my
That would be
gosh,
bad for us.
I'm your little sister.
It would change
Uh,
everything.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
So I'm
And
trying
then
to think
I
who
guess
else was.
Marconi and
Oh,
Helen,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're fine. I mean, I like that Marconi is like, we get
We
to
do
see
need to
him
bring up
actually. Yeah.
Wild, though, that child.
Oh my gosh. Plot line of the century. The child
How did we
wasn't
forget
his.
that?
It was Helen's all along. Like, what?
Yeah,
Why?
too much.
It was way too much plot. It was just
Yeah.
shoved in there for no reason. Why are they in a romantic relationship? This
This
man,
is again where I feel like there's many times, like the beginning of this book, you and I were vibing and we are
yeah,
like, oh, yes, this is happening. And then Butcher over complicates things.
yes. Why was Marconi there? Why did he go through the Never Never? Why is he now part of the Sealy Court?
I honestly
Why?
think he could have 50 books. He has 30. He could have 50 books if he would take some of these plot lines and put them in other books.
Yes. And I just don't understand the Marconi of it all at this point. Like, I feel like
No.
there's been a check written that we just can't cash with him.
Mhm.
Because he's supposed to be this interesting dynamic, evil, but not evil character. But like,
He's kind of plot witchy too because he
there's
just
no
kind of
teeth
swoops
to
in.
him. There's no teeth to him. Like, he might as well be a protagonist at this point. Like,
I mean, he
the
kind of
reason,
is.
yeah, because like the reason Helen hated him was because he shot her daughter, but it wasn't him, it was someone else. And also, he's protecting the daughter even though they weren't together, but now
Hmm.
they are together. And also, like, does this woman only know three men in all of Chicago? Her husband, Harry, and
Yes.
Marconi? Like,
Yes.
there's no reason for it. And it just, there's so many backflips and like
Hmm.
backbending ways
Hmm.
to get to this that it just does not work.
Correct. Yeah. I do think though that you mentioning like, yeah, this is almost a protagonist at this point. He kind of is a protagonist
Yeah.
because he just swoops in to help. And I know we're supposed to believe Harry when he's like, I just don't trust this guy, but I have tons of respect for him. I'm like, you have tons of respect for him because he's kind of doing heroic things. He's
Yes.
helping you out a lot.
And like, even if it's for a contractual obligation, who
Hmm.
cares? Who cares?
Right.
He's still helping you. So, yeah, Marconi, man of mystery? Question mark.
Marconi is our
Yeah,
man.
I guess Marconi is Harry's man. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
For sure.
All right. Now, any
Well,
final thoughts?
I probably will think of something else and
We can add it
we'll
in
talk about it
tomorrow.
next year in the next year of the dozen.
If we have any final thoughts, we can just also record them and splice them in
Or
right
talk about
here.
them on Discord.
Discord. So if everyone is following along, you should be following us over on Discord where we can talk about any of these seasons, really. If you
Yes.
want to come chat about a previous season, we are happy to talk about it.
Yes.
You can also follow us on all of our social media platforms, OWWR Pod, specifically on Blue Sky and Instagram, where a giveaway should be going on right now
Ooh.
for our indie mission book. Uh,
Revenge arc.
by Cat
Mm.
Valor. Cat is going to come on to discuss the book, so
Oh,
make
yay.
sure that you are following along and meeting up with her later as we cover her for Indie Mission. But before that,
Yay.
next week we will be covering Martha Wells's Witch King.
Witch King.
Hannah is 30 pages away from finishing right now, so she will
Yay.
have it done for next week for the release of the second book that
Queen
will be
Demon.
Queen Demon that will be coming out the day before. And the day before, when that book comes out, we will also be having a special bonus episode with the
Nevo.
lovely Nevo for her book or for her next book in the Singing Hill series, A Mouthful of Dust.
Which is
So
so
make
good.
sure it's
And
so
also
good.
topical and horrifying and
Great for spooky season. We
yes.
don't get into too many spoilers, so make sure you're listening. I think
Mhm.
we give a very strong warning right before I think the biggest spoiler
Mhm.
that Hannah asks.
Sure.
So make sure that you are listening to all of those amazing things coming
Also,
out soon.
just I'm gonna say it again. Go read The City in Glass
Uh-oh.
by Nevo, please. Like, just stop what you're doing. Why are you listening to us and not reading The City in Glass?
Just go do that right now and then come back to rate, review, and subscribe.
Yes.
It's a great way to get other people involved in the podcast. We want everyone to join because after Indie Mission, we are investigating the Dublin Murder Squad.
Yay!
We're getting into our Murder Girl era, just as Hannah was talking about serial killers. I can't
Woohoo!
wait to make Laura read these books. I love them so much. So make sure you just get to see all of
I hope they're
that.
very atmospheric. I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, so exciting. I loved this first book. I wonder if you'll hate it. Lots of people felt very
Mm.
divisive about the first book, so I can't wait to
Mm.
see what your thoughts are. Um, and join us next week, like I said, for some Nevo
And
and
thanks for listening
some Martha
today.
Wells. Bye.
Bye.